Wow. Pura vida, mi gente. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Give thanks, give thanks. MHOE, Most High over everything. Thanks for joining me tonight. We're gonna continue reading a book we've been reading. A book I bought. I've been scanning every chapter just so I can be able to read it with you guys. I don't know if you guys don't mind if we go ahead and read chapter 4 tonight of the book In Plain Sight, what you see here on the screen. Pretty interesting chapter, you know. If you guys don't know about Anubis Cave, it's like a little intro. But very interesting things they found in Anubis Cave in Oklahoma. And one of the main things is the hieroglyphic of Anubis, so-called Anubis, right? We know who Anubis is, right? We're going to go over that a little bit today because they're going to mention who Anubis is. But welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Shout out to all the moderators, everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining live. All right, so before I begin, just real quick, you head over to my channel, the main page, and you go over to the playlist tab. All right, I got this organized for you a little bit, as much as I can. And you're gonna find this series, right, where we're reading today, this book, In Plain Sight, Old World Records Found in Ancient America. You hit view full playlist, and you see all the parts here. So yesterday I kind of re-uploaded parts 1 and 2, chapters 1 and 2, the introduction, because it was part of a very long video. I was live, and so this was at the end. So after 2 hours, so I want to make sure everybody knew where to find it, and it's on its own video now. Chapter 1 and 2. We read chapter 3 before, about 7 months ago. All right, very good chapter, very interesting, and today we're gonna get into chapter 4 once again. So again, thanks for joining. Again, I bought this book, not a cheap book, but I appreciate all the donations, the patrons, and now the channel members now, because you make it possible for me to be able to buy books like this to share and read with you guys and research. All right. So thank you. Again, the book In Plain Sight, Old World Records in Ancient America by Gloria Farley. Again, anyone who reads this book can never again believe that Columbus or even Leif Erikson discovered America, all right? Evidence presented that old world people were here centuries before them in the form of translated writing on stone and related petroglyphs, which the author has carefully recorded for the past 45 years, all right? And she explains in chapters 1 and 2 how she had to climb, cliffs and walls and go in caves, but she did it, and her and all the people with the epigraphical society, Barry Fell and all of them, proven, all these old world inscriptions found all over North America. All right, so again, today we're gonna get into chapter 4. And it's the Anubis Caves. Discovery and development. So it says here, Anubis the Great rendering of Ampu was identified with Hermes. Again, Anubis is who? Is Hermes. Because we know Anubis Hermes is Hermes. And we know Hermes is who? Thoth, right? Thoth, Mercury, etc. We're just talking about Thoth, And when we talk about Anubis, we're just talking about Shalot, right? Shalot, the original, the real Anubis, Shalot, who is a twin of Quetzalcoatl, not Quetzalcoatl himself, but his brother. Hmm. So, conductor of souls, Hermes, conductor of souls, Anubis, and Shalot. It was Anubis who opened for the dead the roads of the other world. He is represented as a black jackal with a bushy tail, or as a blackish skinned man with the head of a jackal. Blackish skinned man, huh? Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology. If my name makes a mark upon the world, hold on, let me, zoom in, there we go. It will probably be because of the discovery of the importance of the Anubis caves to American prehistory. These are a group of 5 small caves in western Oklahoma, all of which are filled with the wealth of Old World writing and related petroglyphs. The work of this site has covered 15 years and still remains incomplete. The true history of the research on this site needs to be set down in chronological order, as it has been distorted elsewhere. I do not claim to have been the first to see the caves or their contents, as they contain graffiti from the 19th century. I do claim to be the first to recognize the old world relationship and bring it to the attention of others. Here must be inserted an apology to the author of a report which cannot be referenced in this book. It was published approximately 10 years before I first saw the caves, although I did not learn of the reference until 1993. It contained very incomplete sketches of some of the figures in the caves. My reason for the omission is that his title gives the location of the caves. This would betray my promise to the property owner not to reveal their location. It says here recognition. This story began on June Day in 1978 when my exploring party was trudging through tall weeds toward the caves, which face west. The caves are shallow shelters eroded out of a sandstone cliffside. With me were John Schuler of McAllister, Oklahoma, who had long been my best assistant, and Dale Murphy, also of McAllister, at time a geology student at the University of Oklahoma. Also in the party were Earl and Margaret Silverson of California, who had shared many trips with me, as he and I had been co-authors. Our guide was a local rancher who is a dear friend. He prefers not to be named in order to protect his property, as has been the wish of other ranchers in the area. Our guide wanted to show us a petroglyph of a buffalo with his ribs showing. This was thought to depict a starving animal. Little did we know at the time that this was a distinctive Celtic art form, all right? So-called Celtic, seen in reverse. The 5 caves are numbered from south to north in the order that they were seen. Cave 1 was shallow and not entered on this day, as we climbed into the adjacent Cave 2. 3 walls of this cave were hold on guys, covered with script and petroglyphs that one swift glance was cast around the entire circumference to judge what might be found of most importance. My gaze focused on an incised panel on the back wall. It was 4.5 feet long and very complicated. Figure 4-1. All right. So a little bit here. This is what they were finding. You can see like animals, elephants. You see Anubis, some writing, ogham, and some other stuff here. All right. Again, they find this in Oklahoma, guys. The most distinctive feature of the panel was at the upper right, a canine image with sharp ears and a bushy tail. I exclaimed, "This is Egyptian," so called, right? Which greatly amused all my friends. Our guide chuckled and said, "It's just an old coyote." But I knew that an Oklahoma coyote would not be wearing a crown, and that he would not have the royal flail of ancient Egypt standing on his back. Figure 4-2. A flail is a whip with a handle, alright? This is what she's saying. It's just like the ones in Egypt. so-called Egypt, and the hieroglyphics. They're just retelling a story over there. The crown was composed of two tall curved marks like parentheses on each side of his ears, almost tapering together at the top. I had recently seen a similar frail to that on the canine figure in New Orleans at the King Tutankhamen exhibit, which was at that time traveling the country. All right, interesting, huh? The crook and the flail are usually shown crossed on the breast of the pharaohs and the god Osiris as symbols of authority. All right, just like right here on the right. Another reason for my insistence that the image was Egyptian was the presence in the cave of both Celtic ogham and Numidian scripts, a combination which had occurred at two other sites in the area, which had Egyptian features. At the top left of the panel was an anthropomorphic figure wearing a rayed crown, standing at the top of a cube, obviously a sun god, obviously, according to them, right? To the left of the panel was a round window cut into the stone, which may have been a natural opening which had been enhanced. This opened into a cave 3, or opened into cave 3, as did also smaller peephole below the window. A person could sit on the floor of cave 2 and observe through this foot-wide opening, if anyone were approaching cave 3, through a tunnel which leads into it from the north. Syversen was intrigued by this arrangement and left to inspect cave 3. While Schuler photographed, I traced petroglyphs and Murphy went exploring. Silverstein called through the yard-wide window for tracing paper and crayons. Although cave 3 was replete with script, he had selected for tracing a 3.5-foot long ogham inscription carved very clearly on the back wall. His feeling that it was important was correct, as this inscription proved to be the key to understanding the entire site, although 2 years would pass before this was realized. This inscription would become known as the 6 months inscription. All right, so in case you guys don't know or understand the importance, you're not supposed to be finding ancient ogham inscriptions here. That's supposed to be in the British Isles or in Europe, and other places in the world, not over here, supposedly, right? And then the other significant thing about what the inscriptions they find here in the Americas is that they're like a more classic, more older version of what they find in Europe. So even ogham, they're finding older versions of ogham here in the Americas than what they're actually finding in the British Isles. Talking about a true origin, or what came first. Murphy had located Cave 4 a short distance to the north. This cave is 12 feet above the ground, within a cliffside. Murphy shouted that he had found a ship. This had to be seen. Not being young and agile like him, I had to climb a tree and be pulled over. A sharp stone edge resulted in badly bruised ribs. This was a small price to pay to see the walls of almost solid ogham writing in a strangely shaped ship, which was recorded. All right, and so this is what he's seeing. Again, ancient ogham, an original classic form. All right, so again, we're reading the book in plain sight. This is chapter 4, the Anubis Cave. You just joined us. And again, I'm gonna have this. I'm scanning, this book as I go chapter by chapter, and I already have chapters 1 and 2 on my Patreon page, but I'll have all the chapters of when it's complete or as I go. I'm gonna upload chapters 3 and 4 soon on the Patreon page in case you guys are interested. But very good book. Continues, says, returning home were many tracings and photographs of the inscriptions and petroglyphs in the caves. The first task was to submit the ogham inscription, with Stuyvesant had traced to Dr. Barry Fell, right? You guys know from the book America BC, and the director of the epigraphical society. Yeah, it was a great disappointment when Fell said that he thought that the writing was pseudo ogham, probably made by Indians who were trying to imitate the genuine ogham script. present in the area. His reasoning appeared valid, for the inscription contained 6 straight marks jutting up in a group from the horizontal stem line. Although ogham alphabets do vary, there is not one which has an alphabetical letter of 6 marks. The second task was the study of Egyptian references to identify the canine figure. As remembered, the Egyptian Book of the Dead has illustrations of cows and birds bearing on their backs the royal flail. Further searches revealed paintings of the jackal god Anubis with the flail on his back. The jackal is usually in the couchant position, crouched with head up. One of these illustrations was from the tomb of Senetgen or Senetgan in the Valley of the Nobles. The Oklahoma Anubis is very much like a painted image of him on a papyrus of the New Kingdom, which spanned from 1580 to 1090 BC, according to their chronologies, right? Gotta maybe dodge the hijack. This papyrus is now displayed in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. He appears in a tableau which represents the course of the sun. He walks beneath the cubical throne of Ra Harakte. This form of the sun god is depicted as a man with a falcon head, topped by the sun disk and the ureus, the sacred asp. Anubis is shown as very skinny, with erect ears, and on his back he bears a flail. Little was it suspected at the time that the connection between Anubis and the sun god would play such an important role in discovering the true purpose of the Anubis caves. Knowing that there must be a better opinion than my own for verification that the Egyptian jackal god was truly depicted in an Oklahoma cave, I invited Dr. Clyde Keeler of Georgia to accompany Schuler and me on a second visit to the site. This occurred in October of the same year. Keeler was selected because he had spent 30 years studying the culture parallels between the Kuna Indians of Panama, listen to this, and the ancient Egyptians. All right, we got a future video. Again, the culture parallels between the Kuna Indians of Panama and the ancient Egyptians, so called ancient Egypt was here. A retired Harvard geneticist, then aged 78, he was willing to fly 750 miles ride in a blazer, another 600 miles, then dodge cactus and crawl through barbed wire with us to see the figure of Anubis. One look and he said it was well worth the effort. Later he said that it was one of the high points of his life. He verified the form of Anubis, and we agreed that the space enclosed by the marks above his canine head was the shape of the white crown of Upper Egypt. Keeler was also pointed out many other aspects of the panel, especially the figure of the sun god. These will be discussed in the next chapter. In addition to the rays of the sun god's crown, there were 2 other sun symbols on the panel, which Keeler thought were of importance. To our left of the sun god appeared an arc with rays, which later was to be called the rising sun. This is also referred to as sun number 1. An image formed by the rays around the sun god's head was called sun number 2. Between the sun god and Anubis was a larger hemisphere, with many rays, later to be called the setting sun. This is also referred to as sun number 3. Keeler also observed the prow of a boat, which contained lettering. He thought this craft represented the Egyptian solar boat. On my first visit, my party had seen 2 deeply drilled holes, like eyes, near the bottom of the panel. It was Keeler who realized that these were the eyes of an elephant figure, incised in dim lines behind superimposed straight marks, as if it were behind bars. He traced the large ears, the hanging trunk, thick legs, sagging belly, and short tail. The size of the ears indicates that it is an African elephant. Dodge the hijack. Oh, because of the size of the ears, it has to be African, huh? That's how you classify that today. That's where you find them today. That's not where they originated, huh? Only. They just got these animals, right? We read that in my ancient animals video, and we know that the ancestor of all elephants, the bones, they found them all over the Americas, and we know that there was many different types of so-called elephants in ancient America. The image was phallic, like the figure of Anubis. A hippopotamus standing behind the elephant was not recognized at this time. All right. Here's the image looking like the Warner Brother dancing elephants. The Anubis panel contained so much more that it was decided that a latex mold was imperative. We painted on the liquid latex layer by layer. This labor was interspersed with a trip to Colorado where I had been asked to lecture, and with other explorations in the area. Fortunately, the weather was warm and dry, so we were able to complete the mold and pull it off a few days later. We also obtained other latex molds and many careful tracings from the caves. Keeler also noticed that under another stone window opening between caves 1 and 2 is a wide and shallow libation bowl with a cross cut into the bottom, which he thought had a solstice affinity. Keeler and I created somewhat of a sensation in the nearest small town in our quest to purchase nylon netting, which we had needed to reinforce the layers of latex. Never being neat with applying liquid latex, my clothing and even my hair looked as if I were afflicted with some terrible plague. Keeler is so cold-natured that even in warm weather, he constantly wore an overcoat and a beret while maintaining his professional dignity. We must have made quite a pair as the store clerks wondered aloud why we wanted nylon net. No use to explain, Keeler told me. They would they wouldn't believe us if we told them the truth. Hmm. So shout out to again Gloria Farley, the author of this book. She's literally doing all this, adventuring and exploring, and so it's pretty interesting, how she tells her story in the beginning, right? So make sure to catch just chapters 1 and 2 if you haven't. Cooler brought us back to McAllister, Oklahoma, where we picked up my car, and we arrived at my home at midnight. Although Keeler had to be at the airport 50 miles away at 8 o'clock the next morning, we immediately plunged our arms into wet plaster up to our elbows. A cast was made for my study so that Keeler could take the latex mold and make another cast at his home. He also made a life-size diagram of the entire design from the latex mold and reproduced it on a blueprint machine. From his plaster cast, Keeler discovered that above the elephant there was the dim front portion of a hippopotamus. In front of the elephant was the head and shoulders of a crocodile. These and the jackal are all native to, listen, North Africa, right? He's talking about a jackal, right? Is it really a jackal they're depicting, or is it shallot, an ancient dog of America, one of the oldest dogs in the world, breeds, and we know that the ancient Mayas, the ancient so-called Incas, and even in the mounds, we know they buried their dogs. Same, they had shalots. This is what they're really depicting. All right, and again, he's saying crocodiles, right? Are you saying we don't have crocodiles in America? Come on, guys, dodge the hijack. This is what I'm saying. Always trying to bring somebody from the other side of the world. Oh, no, what do you mean these are? Who says that's a jackal? Check out my Anubis video, guys. We broke it down. It ain't no jackal. Keeler also noted a stick figure, which he called the stable boy, holding up a rod and tending the animals. Keeler also noted a stick figure, which he called the stable boy, holding up a rod and tending the animals. Sorry, I read that twice. Keeler and I are in disagreement over whether another image is a horse's head, or, as Keeler believes, an Egyptian shallow. Why are they doubting a horse? Because horses ain't supposed to be here, right? But horses originated in America. He also found a tree of life petroglyph in the panel, what he considers to be the wing of another figure, which he calls the winged Isis. Other colleagues later thought was another sun symbol. Whether or not we agree in every detail, I give Keeler great credit for his insight, labor, and opinions, which he explains in a 1985 article. And she got the source. Keeler and I co-authored a 22-page article on the subject of Anubis in Oklahoma, 7 pages of which were published in 1979. All right, so she got the footnotes, and you can go see, if you get the book, which ones they are. And it says geological advice. Actually, I'll show them at the end. I think I do show them. So it says my third visit was made in May 1979 when Schuler and I guided geologist Bart Torbert, Jean Dupre of Colorado to the site to gain their opinions on the age of the inscriptions. As petroglyphs are not carved into organic material, they cannot be dated using the standard tool of archaeology, the carbon-14 test. All right, listen, they can't use no carbon-14 dating, so they can't really tell you. Therefore, the only way to judge the relative antiquity of petroglyphs is to examine the amount of weathering the carbon has suffered. All right, this is how they determine. What was it? Sorry, guys. This is most clearly seen by the rounding of the edges of the grooves of the petroglyphs and in the relative amounts of patina development inside the grooves and on the surrounding surface of the rock face. These are influenced by the hardness and composition of the stone, the local climate, and how the particular petroglyph is protected from the elements by its location. So this is how they determine all petroglyphs around the world, guys. So if they're going to use the same technology or whatever, to determine if something is old or recent, then you got to do the same over here, right? You got to be fair. Apply the same science, so-called, right? While examining the site, Torbert and Dupre agree that the inscriptions and petroglyphs presented in this and the following chapter are not of recent origin. This conclusion is supported by the fact that graffiti dates of more than 100 years ago at the site show much sharper edges. This conclusion was confirmed by other geologists who visited the site in the years noted by their names. Alan Gillespie of Washington, all right, Gillespie, 1982, Murphy of Colorado, 78, 82, and 84, and Orville Russell of Maryland, 87. So what are they telling you guys here? This is ancient. The geology proves it. They try to say it was recent. No, they just painted the Egyptian dog, jackal, somebody. No, coyote. No, it's ancient. And it has the Egyptian frill, royal frill on it. Because ancient Tamari was here. In June 1980, my fourth visit occurred when Schuler and I returned to the caves. The time we took Dr. John Geiger of Wynnewood, Oklahoma, who delights in tying a red bandana around his head and laboring in the heat if he is recording petroglyphs and inscriptions. He meticulously traced all the inscriptions in Cave 3 among other duties. I could not give up the idea that the long ogham inscription was important, in spite of its 6 marks, so I sent a latex mold of it to Fell. This persistence produced results when in December 1980, Fell wrote that he had deciphered the inscription. In the intervening time, he had studied many ogham inscriptions from Alberta, Canada, and had been able to reconstruct the old Celtic calendar. It was divided into 2 6-month periods separated by the equinoxes, with each period centered on the solstices. Fell realized that the 6 vertical marks above the stem line of the inscription actually represented the numeral 6. He was then able to translate the inscription from the Gaelic language. Come on now. So they're using Gaelic come on, to translate ancient inscriptions found in America. The wording that was eventually published as in agreement with colleagues was the sun is 6 months north, six south for space of months equal number. Hmm. This came to be called the 6 month inscription because its meaning is that the sun is 6 months in the north and then 6 months in the south. This was very plainly an indication that whoever wrote the statement had a knowledge of the equinoxes which occur in March and September near the 21st day. The equinox is when the duration of daylight and darkness are exactly the 12 hours each. And that's like where I live, guys. That's what we get in Costa Rica. 12 and 12 all year round. The prediction. My fifth visit to the caves was in June 1981, accompanied by Robert and Sharon Wilson of Peoria, Illinois. Fortunately, we had also invited Dr. John Polanski of San Francisco. He had visited me the previous October and had seen the plaster cast of the Anubis panel. On this summer day, an hour before sunset, we were hot and tired. Polanski and I had literally walked past a coiled rattlesnake hidden in the weeds. Our rancher guide had seen it and quietly killed it while we were worked in Cave 4. The blazing sun made the west-facing caves very uncomfortable. Everyone was ready to call it a day except Polanski, because I had just explained to him the translation of the 6 months inscription in Cave 3, which he considered very significant. Polanski had experience in archaeoastronomy and had discovered ancient calendar sites in California. Because this happened to be the day of the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, Polanski suggested that he and I should remain until sunset to see if anything would happen in Anubis Cave 2. He explained that the setting sun might throw some significant shadow on a petroglyph. This resulted in Polanski's now famous prediction. Looking through the stone window in Cave 3 at the Anubis panel, in Cave 2, he said, I predict at the instant of sunset on equinox day some play of light and shadow from the cave's entrance will be thrown on this panel, perhaps a shadow pointer on one of the sun symbols, which will prove that this is an equinox site. This was the first time that a translated inscription was used to forecast an event. Although we climbed into Cave 2 and watched the panel until after sunset, we observed nothing of importance. A play of light and shadow was thrown on the ceiling above the panel, but not in any significant manner. We decided that it was essential to have an observer at the site during the autumnal equinox. As both of us lived such great distances away from the site, our rancher guide was asked to take photographs of the setting sun, the cave entrance, and the Anubis panel during the hour before sunset, and to observe whether any of the protrusions near the cave entrance might cast a shadow which would fill any of the sun signs just at the moment of sunset. On equinox day, September 1981, our rancher friend made photographs that showed that the large wedge-shaped opening near the left of the cave entrance did allow a moving shaft of light to be projected onto the Anubis panel during the hour before sunset. A protrusion at the bottom of this opening, which he called a knob, cast a shadow which acted as a pointer moving across the panel, and the cube under the sun, God, which before sunset he said it arrived at the large sun symbol, and light was cast on the figure of Anubis. Due to the misunderstanding, the work was again delayed. The photographs taken by our rancher friend at Equinox were received by me. They were not shared with Polanski in the belief that he had duplicates. He is one of the world's busiest people. But if he at that time had seen the photographs, he would have understood their full significance. Equinox display observed. In February 1982, I was visited by Mill McGlone of Denver, secretary of the newly organized Western branch of the Epigraphic Society. He had been photographing inscriptions and petroglyphs in Colorado, had visited Picture Canyon where I had worked since 1973, and he was greatly interested in the work I had been doing for 34 years in the epigraphic field. As he was familiar with Fell's books America BC and Saga America, he had read about many of my discoveries. With his background and interest, I felt we could work together. He had 5 cameras of professional quality, and quality photographs of the Anubis caves were needed. We agreed that we would share sites, and he would take photographs for the book, this publication I was writing. He would keep separate and private all photos from my sites. He was asked if he would visit the Anubis caves the next month on Equinox Day. He was at first reluctant to do so, as there was an equinox site in Texas he wished to record. He was also skeptical about the great importance I attached to the site, but he went, guided there at my request by my rancher friend. After seeing the site, he called to say, I see what you mean. While McGlone was in the area, I asked our rancher guide to take him to other sites. 4 other ranchers' friends were asked for permission to allow him, accompanied by our guide, onto their land to photographs, which was given. It must be explained that the ranchers of the area, although living a distance from each other, are a close-knit group, checking on each other's daily well-being by telephone and helping keep watch on each other's property. Permission to enter their land is not freely given. I had earned it with 9 years of personal friendship, visiting in their homes, attending church with them, and developing mutual, genuine trust. All right, she did the work. Organized planning. My 6th trip to the Anubis Caves occurred in June 1982 when a group of us met in the area of the caves to explore other sites, and some of us began planning on how to properly record the procession of light and shadow on the Anubis panel at the next equinox day in September. This group included Polanski, Dr. Alan Gillespie, and his wife Karen, also of California. Gillespie's doctorate is in geology, and he is a very knowledgeable person in a number of fields. With me was young Edward Harrington of McAllister, Oklahoma, one of my helpers on many field trips. Also present was Murphy, at this time taking his master's degree in geology at the University of Colorado, and McGlone. It was decided that we needed an astronomer, and I proposed that Gillespie's father, Roland, an old friend and retired NASA engineer, should be invited to be on the research team I was trying to organize. All right? You guys hear that, right? This was to become known as the Anubis Cave Project Team. In August of that year, McGlone and his friend Philip Leonard of Utah, president of the Western branch of the Epigraphic Society, arrived at my home for a week's work. Leonard had been certified by Fell as a translator, with the agreement that Leonard would do the preliminary work of translating and then submitting this work to Fell for his approval. As my files contained more than 100 recorded inscriptions which needed translating, the files were open to McGlone and Leonard, while I cooked 18 smorgasbord type meals, trying to meet all our dietary requirements. Never had it been realized that translating ancient transcriptions could be such a task. The 2 men worked at least 10 hours each day in a welter of tracings, molds, casts, and reference books. They selected about 10 inscriptions from my files to work on during the week, finishing perhaps 4 to their satisfaction. The observation. Never the time of the September 1982 equinox. We began gathering near the site for what was my 7th visit. Alan Gillespie arrived from California, Roland Gillespie from Washington State, and McGlone from Colorado arrived together one day early to check out the procession of the shadow pointer, which they dubbed the thumb pointer because of its shape. They discovered that a 4th sun symbol could be of great importance. It was a small red arc hanging from the bottom right corner of the large setting sun symbol. Afterwards, this new symbol was named the vertical sun and is also referred to as the dangling sun or sun number 4. Polanski and I met in Dallas and arrived with photographic equipment. On the afternoon of the equinox, detailed planning was carried out. Roland Gillespie and McGlone were to use the still cameras while Polanski made a time-lapse movie. Alan Gillespie's task was to observe anything unusual in Cave 3. My job was to record any vocal comment of the entire group at the exact second it was made. This proved to be almost impossible because the simultaneous observations were sometimes shouted. My log was pages long and later proved to be valuable. During the last 2.5 hours before sunset, all of us watched with amazement as drama unfolded. The display had been minutely planned by some ancient artist or artists who had sophisticated knowledge of the movement of the sun. Whether or not the stone pointer within the wedge-shaped opening at the cave's entrance had been enhanced from a natural formation, we do not know. Whoever had incised the Anubis panel had figured out before he made it just where the thumb pointer would throw a shadow and had carved the stone panel accordingly. One can see dim layout lines which were used to determine where to position the Anubis image on the panel. The display began on the wall at the left of the cave entrance, just past the buffalo image, when a small triangle of light quivered over yet another small sun symbol, consistent of a circle with 3 downward rays, first noticed by Polanski. It was later realized that this symbol is the Egyptian hieroglyph for sunshine. Okay? After a few moments, the spot of light disappeared, and a shaft of light traveled across this wall, jumped a gap where the window was located, and appeared on the Anubis panel as a wedge of light about 18 inches wide at its base, with its pointed end to the left. The rather sharp shadow of the thumb pointer has thrown by the setting sun onto the lower left corner a cube upon which the sun god stood. You guys hear this? And slowly traveled toward the jaws of the jackal. The Gillespies also noted light and shadow on another inscription of 12 long marks, included in a panel of script near the left side edge of Cave 3. This was to be later known as the balance inscription. They thought that there should be some astronomical significance in the patterns on the panel. While the pointer traveled, certain parts of the panel were in turn illuminated or fell into shadow. The first symbol to be lighted up within the wedge of sunlight was the symbol of the rising sun to the left of the sun god. Next, the sun god himself was illuminated. When his body from feet to neck fell into shadow of the actual sun sank in the western sky, when the sun's edge touched the distant western mesa, the head of the sun god was in light. At the same time, the large setting sun came into light. The shadow of the pointer had meanwhile become blunted and rounded as it traveled upward and to the right toward the small red vertical sun. All right. So, in case you guys, following along or not understanding or whatever, they're talking about how, during the autumn, the wind, I would be what that's the winter equinox, or when the winter's coming, right? In September, they saw how the shadow, when the sun's setting, how the shadow's casting, a light on the inscriptions as the hour goes, little by little, proven that this is an equinox site, that this is advanced people, and that these inscriptions are ancient, like, just like any other ancient site in the world where, it's doing the same thing. The alignments of the solstice are casting shadows and pointing at certain things. It's the same thing here. And there's actual video up on this. And I think I've shown it in one of my videos. I don't know if it was the Burroughs Cave video I think I've shown it on. I've shown it in one of my videos, segment on this. At the instant of sunset came the climax, when 3 things happened simultaneously. The shadow of the thumb pointer exactly filled the curve of the vertical sun. The head of the sun god, including the rayed crown, fell into shadow, and the entire figure of Anubis, including his frail, was illuminated. All right, Anubis was illuminated. This happens once a year, guys. There in this cave in Oklahoma. A second later, when the sun had slipped behind the mesa, the entire panel was in shadow. The show was over for another 6 months. All right, for another 6 months. Like, so I guess it happens every 6 months. It must be emphasized that the above described alignments happen only at the sunset nearest the actual hour of the equinox. The day before or the day after, the pointer does not travel exactly from corner to corner of the cube. The sun symbols do not fall into light or shadow in a meaningful way, and the pointer does not fill the exact lines of the curve of the vertical sun. The artist or artists who laid out this panel also understood the ancient Egyptian concept of day and night, of the sun ruling the sky by day and at sunset sinking into the underworld of darkness, guarded by the Anubis, the god of the dead, or Shalot, right? This association with Anubis is explained more fully in the next chapter. All right, so again, guys, they're seen in reverse, right? This is the original Tamari or beloved land, ancient Egypt. Egypt means temple of Pita. It's a building or a mound or a pyramid, not a specific location in Africa. That's not what the etymology of Egypt is. It's a Greek word, all right? So again, this is a photograph of pointer shadow on Anubis panel. So it completely put all the light on this as it's moving. So this diagram showing path of a shadow pointer during sunset on the day of the equinox. Photograph of moving profile shadow in cave 3. And look at that, it's pointing. Wow. It is not only in cave 2, in which something happens at equinox. In cave 3, other plays of light and shadow happened simultaneously with the display in cave 2. They were not to be understood until later. Alan Gillespie observed that an irregular configuration of stone at the side opening of that cave 3, a shadow or through a shadow like the profile of a man's face, onto a ruler-like scale with 12 divisions, which was inside above the 6 months inscription. This was later called the indicator petroglyph. The nose of the profile seemed to act as a moving marker. Discovery of Cave 5. It was during this same visit in September 1982 that Cave 5 was discovered by our rancher guide and me. Being older, we were walking more slowly than the others, picking our way through the cactus. There was a steep slope to our left, capped by a cliff. Noticing the shadow of a shallow cave in the stone, I remarked that there should be writing in it. My friend replied that he had also noticed the cave but had never inspected it. At my request, he climbed up and called down that it was full of markings. We saw some script and many symbols, the most obvious resembling a kind of eight-legged compass incised on the stone floor. Alan Gillespie made a very precise tracing of this with the compass bearing noted for each leg. His father later made an in-depth study of this petroglyph. Fell interpreted other symbols in Cave 5, named the Compass Cave, as a collection of Christian crosses. Starts to hijack, as this cave is located about 2 city blocks north of the other 4. It is possible that the petroglyphs were made by later visitors who followed the same waterways. All right, always visitors from another place, but no, this is from the indigenous aboriginal people here. Solstice affinity verified. Keeler's prediction that the libation ball within the window between caves 1 and 2 had a solstice affinity was proven correct. Photographs made by our rancher friend December 21st, 1982, the day of the winter solstice, shows that sunlight floods the entire ball at exactly 12 noon. We were all in agreement that there was much yet to be learned at the Anubis caves, but we were handicapped because equinoxes and solstices only occur twice a year each. Even then, any displays of light and shadows can only be seen in clear weather. Decipherments by Fell. So they're talking about Barry Fell. Still, there was much lab work to be done between the field visits. As a next step, McGlone and I had met at Roland Gillespie's home in Washington State in February 1983 for a 3-day work session. Roland and his lovely wife Helen live in a 2-story glass house built against a cliffside among huge trees so that there is the impression of being in a secluded nest. We studied all the photographs made in the caves. Our main accomplishment was preparing a large packet which was mailed to Fell. It contained enlarged photographs made by McGlone and my accumulation of 5 years of tracing and some latex molds made in the Anubis caves. Fell must have gone into a work trance to produce the many decipherments for our use at the vernal equinox of 1983, just 1 month away. Cave by cave, line by line, independently he transliterated and translated the Celtic ogham script into Gaelic language. These inscriptions were interspersed in alternative lines with those in the Numidian script of North Africa, used to write the Arabic language. His translations describe and interpret what happens in the caves at equinox, which we had seen but not understood. All right, America's the true old world. The following translations were presented or are presented as they were given to the Anubis Cave project team in 1983, before the vernal equinox visit. These were published in 1985 in volume 14 of the Epigraphic Society Occasional Publications, and we shall get into a lot of their works, guys. They have so many volumes, so many different articles and reports on all they found in the Americas, guys. So much. The original articles, scripts, transliterations, and translations consumed 68 pages of this publication. To save space in this box, only the translations are given here. The original reference for each inscription in the above publication is given in the following discussions. These can be referred to for further information on a particular inscription. According to the decipherments of Fell in Cave 1, there were ogham inscriptions as follows. All right, this is according to Fell, right? Who a lot of the world considers an expert in epigraphy, the study of ancient inscriptions. So, one line GSCT, Duali 487b, and another line RT preceded a more complicated line, Buala Lian Bulda, in Old Gaelic, Gisak, a magic charm, rat, for good luck, Bualim Pualdel, reading, may Anubis wield the flail. If correct, here's verification that the canine figure was indeed Anubis, since its ancient name is Impu or Ampu. Fell explained the Oklahoma inscription writer must have contact with Egyptian speakers. He must have had. Ancient Egypt was here again, guys, since the name is spelled as closely as the Ogham script can reproduce Egyptian pronunciations. Another Ogham script in Cave 1 disregarding a group of crosses which do not seem to be a part of the inscription, according to Fell, reads TLM BG Wig or Ata Lam Bag U Wigl, meaning, and may his arm be a hindrance to evil. This seems to be another reference to the use of the flail as the whip of authority. Fell then turned to the Anubis panel in Cave 2 to translate the two kinds of script on it, Ogham and the Numidian script, which was used by the ancient Libyans. Alright, all these old world inscriptions all over the Americas again. The Ogham letters FS, rendering the word Theos, are superimposed on the rising sun at the upper left of the panel. The next Ogham word, CRN, is formed by the fingers and crown of the sun god and gives Karna. The next ogham word are found under the setting sun and within the form of the vertical sun. These are beglur or BGLURIRGIAG, you guys see, and clear, or sorry, forming the words bagal uiri daigiyagid daigiyagid. Altogether, these meant instructions for the druid. In clear weather, the projecting piece of rock eclipses the blaze at sunset. This shadow will reach nearly to the jaw of the image of the jackal divinity. This is what one can see happen on the Anubis panel at each equinox sunset. So it's like literally describing what's happening. What they're saying they translated is what's instructed happens on the equinoxes there. The Numidian script, read from right to left, begins even with the legs of the sun god and continues to the left, some of it within the cube itself. A second line of script is to the right of the cube. The letters, all right, those are the letters right here, you guys see, forming the words Ataleila Dayan Bel, Jafira Natans. This translates as enact at sunset the rites of Bel, assembling at that time in worship. This identifies the sun god as the Celtic Bel, not as the Egyptian Ra, as Keller and I had thought. All right, so dodge the hijack and all that. Baal or Bel means Lord. So it could be a whole bunch of other things, and they just mistranslating all this, misrepresented it as well, you know. But again, however, their identities were closely tied in the ancient Near East. It's the same thing when we're dealing with Thoth. Follow the bird, as will be explained in the next chapter. Clearly, the caves were a place of sacred rites and worship by the ancient people who made the panel. In ancient Oklahoma, so advanced. The Bell worship theme is carried out further in cave number 4. 4 lines of the many lines of ogham inscriptions within this cave have been transliterated by Fell, and these are the letters, forming the words Grayan Egbel Mionak und Ele Liuk Mech Ek Eikbel. Yo, hey, Peter, I need your help here, man. Meaning the sun belongs to Bel. This cavern on the days of the equinox is for the chanting of prayers to Bel. It was Leonard who would notice a natural stone chair or throne in one corner of this cave, an ideal place for the priest of Bel to sit facing the west and chant his prayers to Bel as the sun sets on equinox day. It says here, visiting the ice. Armed with Phil's translations, it was imperative that the Anubis Cave project team meet again at the caves at the vernal equinox in March 1983 to check and recheck. This proves difficult for all concerned. For my dismay, Alan Gillespie had withdrawn from the team. Leonard had been invited to become a team member in his place. Leonard and Roland Gillespie flew to Denver and came with McGlone on ice-glazed roads. After 40 years of marriage to J. Ray Farley, I became a widow a week before the equinox. I escaped for an 8th visit to my beloved caves to find solace and work. All right, so yeah, she is, up there in age, guys. And she was doing all this, climbing, doing all this work, it was her passion. Flying again to Dallas, I met Polanski and Diane Kitchen, a personable and intelligent young woman from San Francisco who was a professional filmmaker. They were carrying not only movie cameras, but a 6-foot long tripod and a large canister and a heavy generator needed to operate the cameras. We flew to Amarillo and rented a car, then headed north in intermittent snow flurries which had hardly covered the roads. Reaching a small town 50 miles from our host home at 10 o'clock p.m., we telephoned to see if we should proceed. We were told that the roads were clear, to come ahead. Just 1 mile out of town, we were suddenly engulfed in a howling blizzard with horizontal winds, snow a foot deep, and no visibility. We slid into a deep ditch. We began to realize that we could die here, for the 3 of us were lightly dressed. California and eastern Oklahoma had been warm and sunny that morning. A truck came by. Its driver tried to pull us out and also went into the ditch. An unknown benefactor and a second truck rescued both vehicles and turned us back toward town. Gratefully, we obtained the very last motel accommodations available. The next day was clear, but we shopped for thermal underwear before heading for the caves. Six determined people, Polanski, Gillespie, Leonard, McGlone, Kitchen, and I worked in bitter cold for the next 5 days, walking through snow and carrying heavy equipment. Although somewhat sheltered from the weather within the caves, uppermost in our minds was the thought, will the sun shine at the equinox sunset? I was not too worried, for I am a believer in sincere prayer. Praying with me were our rancher guide and his wife, both devout Christians, and a Catholic nun who lived near my home, Sister Louise Roseman. As the scripture says, if any two of you agree, your prayers will be heard. 2 hours before sunset on equinox day, the clouds began to break and blue sky appeared. Then the sun shone brilliantly. One member of our team, an apparent atheist, was jubilant. Such luck, he exclaimed several times. I told him it wasn't luck. He looked at me strangely and asked, you mean divine intervention? At the ranch house of our host, we conducted team business. Although I formally had offered to resign as project leader because I felt unqualified to lead the effort on a site of such great importance, the team voted that I should remain the leader, since it was my discovery, my organization, and my friends who had been invited to work together. Although never present, Fell was our admitted number one member. Keeler was retained as a consultant. Later, after he visited the caves in November 1983, Dr. Norman Totten, then vice president of the International Epigraphic Society, was also added as a consultant. While meeting at the ranch house, we agreed that Fell's Epigraphic Society occasional publications would be allowed to publish our work, and that none of us would write for newspapers or magazines until after scientific publication was attempted. This agreement did not come easily, as we, 5 team members, are strong minded people, each with opinions of his or her own. Polanski and I were in agreement. McGlone and Leonard were in agreement. Gillespie was left on the fence between the two groups. The 4 men were in agreement on one thing. As leader, it was my responsibility to go see the landowner, inform him of the importance of his caves, offer to lease or buy part of his property, and obtain his permission to publish. This was no simple task. I had only recently become aware of the identity of the actual owner in this land of dubious boundary lines. The ranchers are often in disagreement of the ownership of cattle that wander over improperly surveyed property lines. They joke that the original surveyors of the last century must have been drunk, as the lines coming up from the south do not meet the lines coming down from the north. One of my rancher friends rides in constant surveillance of over 100 square miles of land. The edible growth is so sparse that about 80 acres are required to support one cow. Just one vehicle driving over the land can destroy enough fodder to cause a cow to starve. Understandably, the landowners do not want the public to know the location of historical sites on their property, as it did not seem sensible for one strange woman to barge into the elderly landowner's home with an incredible story about ancient people on his land. The assistance of Dr. Gilbert Brothers of Woodward, Oklahoma, was enlisted. Brothers was then a district superintendent of the church denomination to which the landowner and I both belonged. Brothers had visited my home through his interest in my work. Wise and kind, he was the correct mediator between historian and landowner, as his presence gave credence to our work. The landowner listened intently and believed the description of the historical importance of his caves. He declined to lease or sell the land, but kindly agreed that he could bring in scientific people to study the site. He also agreed that we could publish scientific articles. His terms were that he would not reveal the location of the caves to anyone without his or my permission. This agreement I have continuously and consistently kept through the years, although some other members of the Anubis Cave project team have not. He also agreed that if he ever decided to sell his land, that I would be given first option to buy the acreage, which included the caves. His kind cooperation has been greatly appreciated. Division of work and research. The work progressed. In June 1983, I was privileged to see in San Francisco the edited time-lapse movie made by Kitchen, an impressive production. Polanski was working on a draft of a scientific article to be co-authored by the team. I was researching all aspects of the mythology of the Celtic gods depicted to the right of the Anubis panel, which have not been previously mentioned. These figures were Sheela Gig, the Celtic goddess of birth, a panel containing another image of Bel, and Epona, the Celtic horse goddess, all of which I had identified. These figures will be discussed later in this and the next chapter. All right, this is what they're finding too. Guided my clues from Fell's translations. Gillespie, McGlone, and Leonard were working on the astronomical implications of two inscriptions in Cave 3. The balance inscription, located on a pillar of stone which divides caves 2 and 3, was so called because it contained a rebus ogham in the form of a balance with pillar, cross, beam, and pans. The 12 vertical marks above it were described by ogham script, which said, according to Fell, in shade, the 12 intervals until the day after the balance day in the month of Lambin. This literally meant the 12 scale divisions remain in shadow until the second day of the March equinox. It has to refer to the spring and not the autumnal equinox because Lambin was mentioned. By observing shadows on the 12 vertical marks on days near the vernal equinox, the three men realized that the remarks were arranged in two groups of six each. On the day before equinox, light at sunset falls on the first group of six marks. Not until the day after equinox are all 12 marks illuminated. This indicated that the six marks on the left represent 6 winter months, September to March, while the group on the right represent the remaining summer months. The actual patterns of the shadows on these marks verified Fell's translation and represented the year's division by equinoxes. All right. So here's what they're talking about, guys. All right. Again, ancient Ogham, ancient Numidian, all here, right? Found in North America, in particular. We're finding where? In Oklahoma, this right here, right? On the back wall of Cave 3, above 6 months inscription, is the petroglyph with 12 marks, called the indicator petroglyphs. It consists of two parallel but curved horizontal lines which almost join on the right side, intersected by 12 vertical marks which divide the parallel lines like a ruler. The divisions, however, are not exactly of equal width. The men wondered if the translation of the balance inscription would not also apply to this petroglyph of 12 marks. It had been noted that the shadow of the nose cast by the stone profile at the entrance to Cave 3 fell on the last line on the right on the indicator petroglyph at equinox sunset, while on the other day after, while on the day after, it fell on the place where the parallel lines almost converged. It was theorized that the nose shadow on the indicator petroglyph lines would count off the days leading up to the equinox, but this proved to be true only for the last 2 days before equinox and not the entire 12 days. They thought this fact was caused by the curved surface of the stone on which the petroglyph was incised. It was McGlone who found the key to the puzzle. He noticed that a 3-inch section of the stem line near the center of the 6 months inscription was a double line, which should have some purpose. He then noticed that when the shadow of the chin fell on this double stem line, that the forehead of the shadow profile fell on the indicator petroglyph scale above. Therefore, the forehead shadow can be used for counting the 12 days after the vernal equinox. When the chin shadow is on the double line, the forehead shadow crosses the indicator petroglyph. The forehead shadow moved to the right 1 mark each day. At the autumnal equinox, the shadow moves in the opposite direction, counting the 12 days before equinox. Another indication of the equinox was Fell's understanding of a short ogham inscription which had found on the sill of the round stone window between caves 2 and 3. This inscription spoke of two equal parts, which seemed to describe the equinox day dividing the year into two parts. Sharing with archaeologists, our findings seemed so important that in September 1983, my friend, Dr. Don G. Wyckoff, state archaeologist of Oklahoma, was taken on what would by my ninth visit to the Anubis Cave. Also present were Polanski and Cynthia van der Spuy from South Africa. Although White Wyckoff's is very cooperative in the efforts to preserve the site that I have found, like all archaeologists who have no training in epigraphy or linguistics, here comes the archaeologist saying, "No, that's not old Egyptian. No, no, sorry." Strange markings on stones that someone says can be translated into ancient languages do not impress him. Unless artifacts are excavated in a proper manner, archaeologists do not consider anything shown to them as evidence of ancient events. All right? Again, an ongoing little battle here with geologists and archaeologists has been going on for a while, and they've been disregarding geologists a lot throughout history, guys. Like, and I don't know why geologists still allow that, you know, to continue and to have accepted that to take the archaeologist side of history and not what the geologists are saying, like, hey, we found this here, this is old. We epigraphers constantly try to share our findings with the archaeologists, and hopefully in the future we can work together. And it says here a television documentary. After a very hastily arranged agreement by the telephone was reached with the other team members, McGlone took Scott Monahan of Denver to the caves in order to make a film documentary of the March equinox of 1984. The visit was blessed with perfect weather, and Monahan was able to use his skills and experience to make an impressive record of the shadows as they moved. The documentary contained interviews with Fell, McGlone, Leonard, and me. It was finished in September when I went to the caves for the 10th time to be filmed. The documentary was first aired in Denver on Channel 6, KRMA, on May 7, 1985, called History in the Rocks. The documentary is interspersed with features on other epigraphic sites. A special note was the Cracked Cave in Picture Canyon, Colorado. Their inscriptions concerning the equinox are verified by rays of the rising equinox sun lighting up the inscriptions inside the narrow cave. The inscriptions in this cave are thought to have been made by the same people who inscribed the Anubis caves. It says here Cave 5 solstice display. It was Monahan who in 1985 made a discovery in Anubis Cave 5. He noticed that an ogham inscription on the left wall of the high and shallow cave had a partial double stem line. He recalled the double stem line of the 6 months inscription in Cave 3 and suspected that the double line in Cave 5 might also have astronomical meaning. A translation of the ogham in Old Irish was obtained from Fell, stating that in the month of June, the illumination reaches this far out, suggesting a summer solstice affiliation. All right, and here's a picture of Monahan and out there, and Gloria Farley. I told her, that's what she was at her age doing all this stuff, right? All this boots on the ground, all this excavating and exploring, literally archaeological, epigraphical work. And they're looking into Cave 3, right? It says, on the summer solstice of 1983, a moving notch of light at sunset confirmed that Cave 5 is indeed a solstice site. The last rays of the setting sun formed a light notch that fit exactly into the final groove of the inscription. Monahan stated Another Barry Feld translation has been confirmed by archaeoastronomy. All right, archaeoastronomy is so precise. Epona, the Celtic horse goddess. As the men on the team worked on the archaeoastronomy, my efforts were centered on the mythology of several anthropomorphic figures in Cave 2. Across the back of the cave, worked in among the various scripts, are a series of figures which are interpreted as deities. These include another image of Bel and Sheila na gig, a Celtic goddess figure of complex meaning. These will be discussed in the next chapter. On the right wall near the cave's entrance is inside a figure of a woman riding a horse. She rides side saddle, with her striped skirt spread out over the horse's flank. The stripes of her skirt are not ogham script, but she wears a strange headdress which might translate as ogham. Her head and body are triangular. She has one eye, and her arms reach toward the horse's neck and back. The presence of a horse among ancient Old World petroglyphs in America, all right, was no surprise to me, as explained in chapter The Equine Enigma. The 10-inch horse stands quietly. Is phallic, has a flying tail, upstanding ears, and an open mouth. All of these features are typical of other horse petroglyphs found in the area. Like, guys, when we're talking about petroglyphs, we're talking about really old, right? So why is there so many ancient petroglyphs of horses in America if horses weren't supposed to be here until the last ice age? This is supposed to be, they're supposed to have been gone by the time people were making petroglyphs. This is what I'm trying to explain to you. This is what they tell us in school. But they're finding, I've shown you, I showed you a petroglyph in the Grand Canyon of a horse. A man riding a horse and warriors fighting and all that, like in the Grand Canyon. That proves there was horses here. They had horses. Horses originated in America. That's the hijack. When the Europeans got here, there was horses here. Don't believe their lies. It's in the rock. So, since the equestrian is but a few feet away and at the same level as the two previously mentioned divinities with their strong Celtic overtones, it seemed logical to try to identify her within the Celtic pantheon. Consulting many references, I pieced together the background of Epona, the Celtic horse, goddess originating in Gaul. Her cult of worshippers spread to Britain, Spain, and Italy, and Eastern Europe, as proved by inscriptions of the Roman period. So are they really originating in Gaul if they're finding this here? The Roman cavalry units, impressed by the horsemanship of the Celts, took Epona to Rome. Her image was found on helmets and above the stables of cavalry barracks. She was considered to be the protectress of horses and horsemen. Petroglyph of horses. Dot pattern next to Epona. Yeah. Her name means the divine horse. The word epo means horse. Can also be traced to the Celtic word ebel, meaning foal. She is sometimes shown in statuary with a foal. Most extant images of her show her riding side saddle. There are 300 stone monuments to her in Gaul. All right. The horse was apparently very important or even sacred to the ancient Celts. Some writers believe this idea is exemplified by the dramatic 350-foot long horse image cut into the white chalk of a hill at Uffington in Yorkshire, England. It is still carefully maintained, a tourist attraction seen best from a plane. It is believed to have been cut in the 1st century BC and to be associated with Epona. Believed. Although I had suggested to Fell and other colleagues that this cave 2 figure did represent Epona, this idea was not accepted until 1985, while Fell was preparing to publish Volume 14 of the Epigraphic Society Occasional Publications. All right, I told you there's many volumes, guys. We're going to get into all of them, which was to contain many articles on the Anubis Caves. The whole panel containing Epona and the dot pattern had been carefully traced on transparent plastic with the assistance of a local rancher. Then the huge piece of plastic had been reduced electronically by Diane Sundberg of San Francisco to fit onto the page to accompany an article I had written. The article suggested that the dots might be some kind of script. Fell suddenly realized the meaning of the panel dots to the figures right. Alright, guys? So, in case you guys are wondering, we're on page 82. We're about to get to about, I think, 85 or 86, and that will be the end. So, we're almost there, guys, just so you know. Hope you guys enjoying the reading. Hope you see how important this is. How this would should be rewriting history, and it didn't. His decipherment of the dotted inscriptions, which contains consonants, only begins Boan the horse goddess herself observing the motion of the stars. Fell says that the language is Scottish Gaelic and explains. Gloria Farley, with her perspective analysis of the accompanying carved figure, had already by 1983 recognized the Gaulish horse goddess Epona. This determination received complete confirmation after I recognized the ogham brickring, for the decipherment yields a detailment statement of the goddess, astronomical and calendrical sponsorship, or as also her name, BN, Irish bone, earlier Baianu, is certainly an ogham transcription of the Gaulish name Epona, since vowels are omitted in ogham. Cosine and P is represented by B. Alright, guys, they're literally finding this goddess here. So, again, where's the true origin? The translations of the continuing dots are according to Fell. At Safrain, the sun is in Scorpio. Safrain is also called Savain and most commonly called Samhain. Is the celebration we have inherited as Halloween. All Hallows Eve, okay? Check out my Halloween video. This text is under a dot pattern shaped like a scorpion, a rebus. Scorpio is a Scorpio is the zodiac sign that is said to rule the end of October and the beginning of November. The text then reads, Day of the onset of winter, Bel retires. Festival of ripe corn, abundance, day of ghost. Corn. Fell explained that at Safrain, according to Gaelic tradition, disembodied spirits roam for one day and one night, and those wishing to avoid bad luck during the ensuing year made offerings of food to the spirits. He said that our modern tradition of trick or treat is a direct survival of this practice. Alright? Since Fell's translation of the Brikre and Ogham dots indicated that Epona was observing the stars coupled with the fact that Samhain marked the onset of winter, Polanski sensed that here might be another archaeoastronomical pattern to be verified. He asked if I could be in Cave 2 at sunset on October 31st, and if possible, a few days earlier for comparison. Although the site is more than 600 miles from my home, a trip was planned with Warren Dexter of Vermont to photograph the Anubis Caves and other sites in the area. We were in Cave 2 on October 26, 1986. Nothing happened which appeared to be significant. Returning at sunset on October 31st, we held our breath as a cloud that was obscuring the sun drifted away just in time. The fifth day time lapse had altered the pattern of light and shadow in the cave, with the sun halfway behind the mesa, which formed the western horizon. Dexter made clear photographs of Epona and her panel. Epona and her horse were spotlighted by the sun. Alright, guys, they were right. With an inverted wedge of light on her head, a beam of light hit 6 dots on the Scorpio petroglyph, which had been translated as SL, meaning sun. Polanski concluded, the association of the horse goddess with Samhain may thus be a part of ancient Celtic lore. The spotlight effect on the horse goddess, as well as her role to observe the stars on Samhain, suggests a prominent role for Epona during this season. Alright, you guys see the inscription? A horse, Epona riding. This is what they're finding in Gaul over there and calling Epona. Alright, just take a look at it. Open your eyes, man. Horses in America. Unproven criticism says here. Anytime a scholar presents something new and important, he is criticized. Fell has had more than his share of this. Since publication of his decipherments, there have been some debate concerning their correctness. In my opinion, the criticisms have been based on false information. This has included interpretations by persons who had not visited the site and did not understand the physical relationship of the various components in the caves. Another criticism of Fell's work is that it is based on incorrect transcriptions of what is actually on the stone. If this is a problem, it is not Fell's fault, as he has never been able to visit the caves and must rely on the material given to him. Alright, so again, she's got footnotes everywhere. It is true that transcriptions can be faulty. Two photographs, one from 1983, the other from 1988, were taken by another of these criticisms. Although the subject was the same inscription in Cave 1, the photographs were very different. The stone had not changed, but the angles of lighting had. In my opinion, most of the photographs and tracings submitted to Fell in 1983 were correct. Latex molds are dependable unless creased and improper packing. The molds sent to Fell were carefully rolled. As I have never pretended to be a linguist, the aspects of correct translation cannot be judged by me. If Fell could have visited the caves during the early portions of the research, I am sure the work would have progressed at a much faster pace, hopefully with less acrimony. It may take years to resolve all the questions about the Anubis Cave inscriptions and petroglyphs. Whatever controversy there might be over the final meaning of the inscriptions, there is no disagreement as to their importance. Thus ends the chronology of how the equinox and solstice displays at the Anubis caves were discovered. There yet may be more of them, waiting for us to again marvel at the ingenuity of the Old World people who were at the site. Old World people in Oklahoma. Old World people who were at this site. Old World, this is the true Old World. While this chapter explains some of the meaning of some of the petroglyphs at the site, more needs to be said to fully appreciate the complexity of the images. There are also other fascinating features of the caves. While not a part of the solar displays, they still need to be described in order to fully understand the site. All this will be presented in the next chapter. All right. And so that is the end of this chapter of in this book. All right, guys. Well, let me see if I can find something here. See if I can find that. I know I got a video of the sunset and what they found. I have shown it. I'm gonna look for it, guys, and what old video it's on is one of my old long videos, and I'm gonna try to upload that piece so you guys can see it visually what they're talking about. All right. But yeah, again, this was the book In Plain Sight, Old World Records in Ancient America. Again, I bought the physical copy of this book. Pretty expensive book, actually. I consider it expensive, but I bought it because I thought it was very important to own and have and read, because it's not available online anywhere. Hope you guys are enjoying it so far. Again, we've read the first 4 chapters in the introduction, and it's just getting more and more interesting. So make sure to catch up on the playlist of the previous chapters. Hope you guys enjoyed, again, this reading. I enjoyed it reading it with you. All right. Just 1 second. Appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight to read me live. To hear me read live. All right. And, learn with me, because this is the first time I read the whole chapter, to myself too, the whole chapter. So, hey, it was pretty interesting. We are going to get back into Anubis Cave at another point with other person's research. We're going to get into Barry Fell's notes on it and his reports on the Epigraphical Society publications, right? We're going to get into that, and we're going to find that video, and I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to upload it. I'm going to show you guys what they were talking about, that documentary she was talking about, right? So now we got a background I kind of like reading her book because she's also writing like a story, not just the research, but like a story of what she's going through and everything, right? So pretty interesting if you like reading books just to read fictional books. You can just read her story. You're very welcome. So thank you to each for tuning in, all the support. Appreciate it. Uh, that's where we're gonna end tonight. Again, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. About to go lay my head, go to rest, so we can wake up strong for another day and be productive. Give thanks to the Most High. Wow, for everything. All these opportunities we got right now. We're learning, right? And we got the time to do this and the ability to do this. So, we give thanks, and we got the health to be able to do this. We give thanks. All right. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Pura vida. Wow.
Robin Dre, Drizzle Bite.